Okay, today I'm going to talk about a prohormone, but not the kind of prohormone you're expecting. This particular prohormone is not a testosterone prohormone. This particular prohormone is actually a vitamin that is actually a prohormone. I know it sounds a little confusing, but the substance that I'm talking about is vitamin D. Vitamin D is unique because it's a vitamin that's actually a prohormone. In other words, in the body, what we call vitamin D is converted into, through two steps, is converted into a active hormone called 125 dehydrocholecalciferol. For purposes of simplicity, I'm going to refer to that as activated vitamin D or hormonal D. That is the vitamin D that interacts with vitamin D receptors in the body. Now, vitamin D is an interesting vitamin because for many years, the only real purpose of it was thought to be to prevent deficiencies related to bone development. In children, a deficiency of vitamin D causes a disease called rickets, which leads to a malformation of the bones, a lack of calcium deposition in bones. The famous bodybuilder, Mr. Olympia, Franco Columbu, if you take a close look at him, he's slightly bow-legged. He also has a ricket-based abnormality in his chest, in the bones of his ribs, where his pectoral attaches to his ribs, his pectoral muscles. And because of this, it gives him unusual, let's say, striations or cuts across kind of a very deep pectoral cut across. If you look at photos of him when he was in top shape, Arnold Schwarzenegger used to get a big kick out of this because he told me people are always asking Franco how he got that unusual split in his pectorals, and they had no idea that it came from him having rickets as a child. So in adults, the deficiency of vitamin D is called osteomalacia. Now, vitamin D is another reason that vitamin D is unique is because it's a free vitamin. It's the only vitamin that I know of that you can actually get for free. How do you get it? You go in the sun. But here's the asterisk. Here's the small print. The sun has to be at a certain point in the sky to deliver the correct spectrum of ultraviolet radiation that will react with the cholesterol in your upper layers of your skin to convert that cholesterol into vitamin D. Obviously, let's say at northern latitudes during the winter, the sun may be out, but it's not at the right position in the sky. You're not getting the right wavelength of ultraviolet light, so you're not going to get much vitamin D. However, if you do get the correct spectrum of ultraviolet light from the sun, going out in the sun with most of your upper body exposed, your arms and all that stuff, your body will actually produce 20,000 units of vitamin D, which is a pretty massive amount. But any excess is automatically broken down. It's a very kind of elegant system because your body will only use and make enough vitamin D for its needs, even though a great amount of vitamin D is actually made in this manner. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. A lot of people make mistakes. They take, let's say, vitamin D with a glass of water. If you do that, you're going to get some absorption, but if you take it with a meal containing a small amount of fat, the increase in vitamin D absorption goes up to 67% greater than if you consume the vitamin D without a meal containing some fat. What else can I tell you about vitamin? Oh, related to as far as the best way to determine your vitamin D status is to take a blood test for vitamin D. It's not that expensive. It's measured in what they call nanograms. The minimal healthy level of vitamin D is measured by, and what they're measuring, by the way, is the 125 dehydrocholecalciferol, the activated form, because that's the only form of vitamin D that's biologically active. If that level turns out to be 30, that's the minimal amount, 30 nanogram, 30. Let's just call it 30. That's the minimal healthy amount. The optimal amount of vitamin D in the blood is actually 40 to 60. So you want to aim for 40 to 60. Now, the interesting thing is I talked about how you can get vitamin D just by sun exposure, but what's really weird is they've done some studies of athletes, in countries such as Australia and others where you get pretty good sun exposure, and even in Arizona in the United States, where these athletes still, even though they were exposed to the sun, they still showed low levels below 20 nanograms of activated vitamin D. My only guess there, I'm not really sure, I don't know how to explain that. My theory is that they either weren't spending enough time in the sun, because if you look at the athletes, a lot of them were gymnasts and basketball players. A lot of these people who showed low vitamin D levels were indoor athletes. So they probably really, even though the sun was out, they weren't necessarily being exposed enough to the sun to get vitamin D. Indeed, one other analysis of athletes showed that 76% of surveyed athletes were deficient in vitamin D. And let me give you a flat statement. Unless you go out in the sun, where the sun is overhead in the right position in the sky to deliver that UV spectrum to produce vitamin D, or unless you take a supplement of vitamin D, it's a vitamin D3 is the recommended form. Unless you do that, the odds are that you're probably not getting enough vitamin D. It is found in certain foods. For example, 3.5 ounces of salmon have 360 units. An egg yolk has 20 units. Cod liver oil is very high in vitamin D. However, I don't know many people these days who ingest cod liver oil. So the point is, vitamin D is very difficult to get therapeutic amounts from food. If you really eat a lot of vitamin D foods, you're still not going to get it's almost impossible, because to reach, let's say, the therapeutic level of vitamin D in the blood of, let's say, 40, you'd have to be taking in about 4,000 to 5,000 units of vitamin D. This is nearly impossible to get from foods. Some of the foods with the highest level of vitamin D's, again, are very rarely consumed. For example, irradiated mushrooms. If you eat irradiated mushrooms, you probably don't have to worry about vitamin D supplements or getting out in the sun. I have never eaten irradiated mushrooms. I don't know anyone who has. So let's kind of discount irradiated mushrooms. And I'm not talking about psilocybin or hallucinogenic mushrooms. They'll give you another type of problem, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Now, you might say, okay, I'm a bodybuilder. Why should I care about vitamin D? There's a number of reasons. First of all, the initial or the main attribute of vitamin D that most people associate with this promotion of calcium entry into bones. Without vitamin D, you can get stress fractures, which are hairline little fractures in the bone that could be very painful. But more directly, vitamin D actually could possibly have an anabolic effect. Now, the studies of vitamin D on testosterone in men are paradoxical, in the sense that, for example, one study showed that men, show lower vitamin Ds in the winter than they do in the summer, and this was explained by the lack of the proper UV wavelength. Other studies show that men who are low in vitamin D, when they start to take a therapeutic dose of vitamin D, such as about 4,000 or 5,000 units a day, their testosterone level goes up. It actually increases. But again, this is men who are initially low in testosterone. Other studies show that men who have normal levels of testosterone within the normal range, when they take vitamin D, they don't get any effect on testosterone at all. So again, if you're low in vitamin D, it'll probably help your testosterone. But more importantly, the reason that vitamin D came to such prominence in recent years is because they discovered that there are vitamin D receptors all over the body and all the cells of the body. And vitamin D controls the activity or stimulates the activity of over 1,000 different genes in the body. That's very, very important. But among the locations of these vitamin D receptors, they're in the testes, where testosterone is produced. So they think there is some relationship between the normal production of testosterone and vitamin D metabolism. And they're also found in type 2 muscle fibers. Type 2 muscle fibers are the muscle fibers most amenable to muscle growth. Those are the type 2 muscle fibers, and they contain vitamin D receptors. Studies in older people who are frail, when they give them vitamin D, they start to gain lean mass, especially if they start out with a deficiency of vitamin D. And as I said, because of the scarcity of vitamin D in food, an estimated about 70 to 80% of the world's population is probably not achieving the therapeutic levels of vitamin D. What else can I tell you about vitamin D? Uh, I think that about covers it from an athletic perspective. There's some studies indicating that vitamin D also plays a role in fat metabolism, in the sense that it's involved in pathways involving the utilization of fat as an energy source. A lot of these studies are preliminary. I would not call vitamin D a fat burner. However, like I say, it's very important because of these vitamin D receptors, and because of the fact that vitamin D activates so many genes in the body. The last thing I would probably mention about vitamin D is the fact that there's been several recent studies that show that if you maintain a therapeutic level of activated vitamin D, as judged by blood tests, and again, I'm talking 40 to 60 nanograms as judged by the blood test, if you maintain that level, you have a greatly decreased risk of mortality or premature death. So vitamin D might actually help you live longer, which to me is a very good reason alone to take vitamin D. And for those of you that have problems taking vitamin pills, I should also mention two other things. First, vitamin D is a very inexpensive vitamin, very inexpensive. The vitamin D I get, I use 2,400 unit capsules. I take 2 a day. The whole bottle costs me about $6. It's like 360 capsules. And the good thing, especially for women who have trouble taking vitamins, the capsules are extremely small. They're tiny little gelatin capsules. So they're so small that if you drop them on the floor, you'll have trouble finding them. That's how small they are. Anybody could swallow them, a baby. There's no excuse. And like I say, unless you get out in the sun, you're not going to have therapeutic levels of vitamin D. So, you want to invest in a vitamin D supplement. When people ask me which supplements you should take at the minimum, I always include vitamin D because of the fact that vitamin D is so difficult to get in food. So that's about it. I've discussed vitamin D in relation to testosterone and other topics in my Applied Metabolics newsletter, www.appliedmetabolics.com. I will continue to have articles in the future about vitamin D as new research is released about vitamin D. In other words, if they find out, for example, new things that vitamin D does in the body, I will write about them in my newsletter. I also cover nutrition, exercise science, supplements, ergogenic aids, anti-aging, fat loss research. All of this is included in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. It's 40 to 50 pages every month. No advertisements, no lies. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I'm trying to give you the best information possible that's not available anywhere else. You won't find it in any of these so-called crappy science blogs or the magazines, which are just useless these days. I work very hard, and I'm also in this newsletter instilling my over 50 years of empirical knowledge, meaning this is the knowledge I gained from working out, training all these years. I can tell you, I can help you to avoid mistakes so you don't make the same mistakes that I made. I will give you optimal training techniques based on science. There's nothing like it, like I say. So subscribe today to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, www.appliedmetabolics.com. And if you want the best friend you'll ever have, my dogs are being quiet today. They're not barking. Anyway, if you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to a shelter, adopt a dog, and do me a favor, everyone listening to this, just as a personal favor. If the government just got rid of a registry where people could report on animal abuse. So as such, this is a terrible thing because it's going to allow people like, who run these like dog fighting rings and these scumbags like that. It's going to allow them to injure and hurt animals. So I'm asking you as a personal favor, if you ever see animal abuse of any kind, please report this to an authority like the ASPCA, something like that. Please report it because, these animals are great.